It's obvious that Donald Trump is guilty, they say. It's obvious that his legal arguments and his defense are absurd. It's obvious that he is an insurrectionist. And if it's so obvious, why don't the American people believe you? The libs over at MSNBC are absolutely freaking out over this latest delay in the trial for Donald Trump brought by Special Prosecutor Jack Smith over the events of January 6th. They are sure that they're going to prosecute Donald Trump for insurrection right before the presidential election. Of course, he's not even charged with insurrection, but it doesn't matter. That doesn't stop the libs from using the law and using the judicial system as a political tool. And so you got to see this clip here. We're going to take some time on it, but real fast, I want to point out who we're talking about. That's Jen Psaki, of course. Isn't it sweet the way she worked for the White House and collected your tax dollars to be a political hack for Joe Biden? And then she immediately gets a job on MSNBC to do the exact same thing. It's what Andrew Breitbart used to call the Democrat media complex. And if you don't believe it's true, just go ahead and Google what George Stephanopoulos used to do before he got a job at ABC News, and Jake Tapper, and Chuck Todd. And, well, we'll waste our time giving you all of them. Meanwhile, the guy on the far right there, that's Andrew Weissman. He was the lead investigator for Robert Mueller's special prosecutor investigation of Donald Trump on the Russian collusion hoax. That's right. This guy was the lead lawyer on an investigation that turned into a complete and total hoax, a nothing burger. He should be laughed out of a courtroom or a law school, let alone a television studio. But no, he's the guy that MSNBC wants there as their legal eagle, their expert analyst. He was also, by the way, the prosecutor that went after the executives at Enron during the Bush administration. That was political too. See, Bush was connected to Enron. Enron's corrupt. That means Bush is corrupt. This whole use of the Justice Department as a political weapon goes way, way back, guys. And those charges against Enron, the convictions, those were overturned at the Supreme Court. He's a failure, Andrew Weissman is. But he's not, because you see, his job is not to get prosecutions. His job is to politically harm Republicans. And he does that. He does that very well. And the other guy there is Neil Katyal. Now, he is not quite as popular or well known, but he was the Solicitor General under Barack Obama. And he's presented on MSNBC as the centrist. He's just there to talk about the law. He's a super duper centrist. In fact, over on his X profile, he even calls himself an extremist centrist. Isn't that clever? How centrist can you be when your big banner picture is you and Stephen Colbert? Geez, Neil, how about a picture of you and your wife and children or something, right? That's sad. And also, by the way, he links to his TED Talk. I mean, it's like he's a stereotype of a liberal. All right, so these are the two who are analyzing this latest decision to delay the proceedings, the prosecution of Donald Trump. Watch.
So, Neil, let me go to you, because Andrew raised a really important point here. I mean, that this is normal pacing here. As much as we're all impatient and as much as it's not aligned with the timing, give us a sense of what else could be going on behind the scenes here in your assessment. And if this is not this is not move forward soon, I mean in the coming weeks, could the federal election trial start in June, July, and still be concluded before the election?
That real fast, the premise of this entire setup here is we're really impatient and we want this to move along. Can we still get this done by June or July in time for the election? In other words, this isn't about justice. This isn't about the truth. This isn't about the law. This is about Election Day. They're revealing to the world that this entire proceeding is really about harming Donald Trump politically. But we're supposed to accept that. That's actually laudable, according to these legal minds. Watch.
It could. I mean, my view is that actually the normal schedule for an appeal of this magnitude with these types of public interests at stake would have been that this case would have been decided by now. So I understand, like an ordinary garden variety DC circuit appeal, it takes longer, I think an average disposition time of about 6 months. But in a case of this gravity, it should be moving more quickly. Take, for example, when the Court of Appeals for in the South reversed the Judge Judge Cannon's decision last year to protect Donald Trump. It took them, I think, 9 days. And so to use your phrase, Jen, at the beginning of this show, I am officially now at the freakout stage. I've resisted that for a long time, but we are now.
You don't typically freak out, so that's important.
Right. Yeah, no, I think we're now at the point, to use a different legal phrase, justice delayed is justice denied. I mean,
a couple things here. First of all, I told you, it's their own words, freaking out. They are freaking out about this delay. And secondly, counselor, forgive me, I certainly don't have a fancy law degree like you. I wasn't Solicitor General or anything like that. But justice delayed is justice denied is actually something that is usually used in terms of the accused, right? The accused. Like, in other words, you accuse somebody of a crime and you arrest them and they are innocent or they plead not guilty. And then you drag out the court proceedings for years and years and years so they never get their day in court. I mean, it's the reason why we actually have an amendment in our Constitution for the right to a speedy trial. Because when the state accuses somebody of a crime, well, right then and there, the person's life is turned upside down and ruined. And so justice delayed is justice denied is actually about the rights of the accused and the victim from the state's political use of the law. So it's fascinating that he uses that. Justice delayed, justice denied from the perspective of we Democrats need to get Donald Trump.
I can't imagine a more compelling need for speed than the idea that American citizens deserve to know before the election whether a candidate for office is a felon and an insurrectionist.
Real fast here, counselor. Sorry, I don't mean to keep interrupting you, but you know he's not accused of insurrection, right? We need this trial and we need this conviction because the American people need to know if Donald Trump is an insurrectionist. Oh, wow, really? Did you charge him with insurrection? No, we did not. They just want the felony charge. That's all they care about. It's all they want. Why? Well, we told you yesterday, there's one poll out there that shows Joe Biden beating Donald Trump. And the question is not, who do you prefer to be president? The question is, who do you prefer if Donald Trump is convicted of a felony? That's what this is all about.
And it's even more galling to me because this is an easy case. There is no responsible constitutional scholar who thinks Donald Trump is right, that there's an absolute immunity, that a president can go and order Navy SEAL Team 6 to go murder his political opponent and then go and murder the senators who would try him for impeachment. That cannot possibly be right.
Wow. Listen to the language that they're using here and the spectacle that they're raising, this ogre-like crazed murdering dictator specter that they're putting in front of the viewers of MSNBC. And by the way, his complete and total fundamental misunderstanding of our military. It always freaks me out when the left puts these fantasy scenarios in here that the president could order SEAL Team 6 to murder a political opponent. What disrespect does this man have for the Navy SEALs? That in some way a SEAL team would follow that order and obey that order. This man has no understanding of our military or the military code. It's a despicable, disgusting accusation that he would even throw that out there. Number one. Number two, that then murder the senators, right? Look at this picture that he is painting. That what Donald Trump did on January 6th, agree or disagree, or even think that he did anything or nothing that day, but he is comparing it in this legal argument to a man ordering the military to murder his political opponent, and then to the senators that might impeach him. And everyone just nods along on this panel. It's absolutely disgusting.
And Judge Chutkan set a fast schedule here. And I have no idea what the Court of Appeals is doing right now, but I can tell you that I'm really worried that this delay is going to put the trial past June. It's possible that Trump will try and go to the Supreme Court after he loses on the Court of Appeals. That can take months. This is a real problem.
Okay, and real fast, he's assuming that he's going to lose in the Court of Appeals, which really tells you something about the makeup of the D.C. Court of Appeals. And Neil Katyal, he says, no legal scholar, no constitutional scholar agrees with Donald Trump. Well, clearly that's not so. There are several constitutional scholars that have made the argument that, in fact, a president does have a certain level of absolute immunity for the actions and certainly the speeches that he gives, because there was no action here. It was a speech that Donald Trump gave. He did not give orders to SEAL Team 6 to conduct violence, which, again, the Navy SEALs wouldn't follow that order. He gave a speech. And the argument here is, does a president have absolute immunity over speeches that he gives when in office? I think that's a fair constitutional argument to make. But secondly, clearly, constitutional scholars aren't in play here. It's the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. And they clearly, by not coming down with a decision right away, think that there is something to Donald Trump's case. And he won't even accept that. This guy, this legal analyst, won't even accept that as a possibility. He says, I don't know what they're doing. Well, maybe what they're doing is actually taking the president's legal team's arguments into consideration here. Maybe they actually think that there's a very big issue here that needs to be discussed and debated. But also one other thing from Neil Katyal. Again, I want to remind you, he is a law professor. He was the former Solicitor General. He's MSNBC's legal analyst here. And listen to this disdain he has for Donald Trump's right to appeal, for Donald Trump's right to defend himself, for Donald Trump's right to take his appeal to the Supreme Court. He's embittered over the idea that Donald Trump even has legal rights, or that you have legal rights, because don't forget, this entire attempt to remove Donald Trump from the ticket and disqualify him from the election, it's really about your right as an American citizen to vote for whomever you want. This guy wants a couple of people in black robes to remove that right from you. You don't deserve to vote for whoever you want. This guy and his intellectual legal friends on MSNBC and in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, they need to get in the way of you making a decision with your vote. That's some scary stuff right there. All right, there's more.
Judge Chuck, and I think it's important to remind people, she's just adapting to waiting for this ruling. So she's just trying to adapt that. Okay, Andrew, because you are also known for keeping all of us calm here and keeping millions of MSNBC viewers calm. Where are you on the freak out meter here on your end?
Neil and I are in violent agreement on this. And to just add a little fuel to the fire, I mean, whatever judge or judges are slowing this in the DC circuit, it is akin to what Judge Cannon is doing in Florida. This is really not looking good for the federal judiciary in terms of their responsibility to the electorate, whether it's Judge Cannon, who has basically issued a pocket veto on that case and has really slow walked that for no apparent reason. And you have the same thing going on in the DC circuit. So I agree with Neil that there really is no reason for the delay. And if it's coming in a case with that, remember, the legal claim here that Donald Trump is making is absurd. It's one of those things where at the oral argument, the best argument against him was the judge getting the lawyer for Donald Trump to actually just say what his argument was, because it was so preposterous. So the idea that this is going to lead to losing, the war, because even though this decision ultimately will be against Donald Trump, the delay is allowing him to essentially win the battle.
Couple of things here of note. First of all, did you notice that Mr. Weissman just said that the federal judges are falling down on their duty to the electorate? Judges, by definition, are separate from the political process. Their duty is not to the populace. Their duty is not necessarily to voters or to a schedule with an election day, Mr. Weissman, counselor, with all due respect. Their duty and their responsibility is to the law, and to the Constitution, and to the truth. But ultimately, you see what this entire thing is all about. They're showing their cards. All of this has to do with Election Day. All of this has to do with getting a decision from a court so that they can have their headlines and they can have their endless analysis on their cable and broadcast news shows talking about how Donald Trump is a convicted felon. That's it. That's why he uses terms like, well, he wins this battle, he wins the war, because the war is getting to Election Day or getting past Election Day. all they care about is the election. All they care about is the election. All they care about is politics, not the truth, not the Constitution, not the law. And they just revealed that to you in very, very clear terms. It's fascinating, isn't it? If Donald Trump is in fact a felon, if Donald Trump truly is an insurrectionist, as they just said, you would think that the brightest minds in television political media and the brightest minds of the Democratic Party and even a small percentage of the Republican Party who hate Donald Trump, you would think of all of them with their January 6th committee hearings and their documentaries about the events of January 6th and their endless discussion of January 6th and their speeches and their political campaigns and their conventions. You would think that they could actually make that case to the American people without the benefit of one or two people wearing black robes giving it their blessing, right? It's obvious, they say, that Donald Trump is guilty, that his defense is absurd. It's obvious that Donald Trump is It's obvious that Donald Trump is guilty, they say. It's obvious that his legal arguments and his defense are absurd. It's obvious that he is an insurrectionist. And if it's so obvious, why don't the American people believe you? Make the case. If this is really about politics, then your nominee and your nominee for vice president and all of the people running for Senate and the House and governor this year and all of the people that agree with you, they can make that political case and let the American people decide. That's the one thing they don't want to do because they don't trust the American people. They don't trust you. You've betrayed them before. You were supposed to vote for Hillary Clinton and they still haven't gotten over it.